Yo, what's good, everybody? See No the Dreaded Beast here, and today we're going to be talking about weapons, specifically the most powerful weapons in the Big Three. And the Big Three has no shortage of powerful weapons. One Piece has the ancient weapons, Uranus, Pluton, Neptune, and Naruto, you have the seven swordsman's weapons, as well as the treasures of the Sage of Six Paths. But those pale in comparison to the number one weapons in the Big Three. And those are Zanpakuto. And not only are Zanpakuto powerful, they're the most diverse weapons across all three universes because each one is individualized to the wielder. But let's dive right in. So Zanpakuto is the signature weapon of the Shinigami in Bleach, and these start out as Asauchi, or swords with blank souls that are given to Shinigami trainees that enter into the academy. But where do the Asauchis come from? So all Asauchis, and by extension all Zanpakuto, are created by Uematsu Nimaya, the sword god of the Zero Division. And while the exact technique is not known, it is said that he created Asauchi by molding and layering multiple souls on top of each other until he formed the first Asauchi, and it was game from there. But the purpose of these Asauchi is to create a personalized weapons for each Shinigami by having them basically live with the sword for the rest of their lives. So after being given an Asauchi, they will eat, sleep, train, meditate, anything they do in their daily life, their Zanpakuto is going to be right there with them. And what this does is, by creating a connection between the Shinigami and the Asauchi, the Shinigami is able to imprint a part of their soul onto it, giving it its own sentience and personality. And after an Asauchi has made that transition from Asauchi to Zanpakuto, there's still work that needs to be done. There's still dialogues that need to happen between the Shinigami and the Zanpakuto spirit, because they need to come to an understanding so that once the Zanpakuto feels like the Shinigami is ready, they will learn the name and be able to call out the name to release their Shikai. And what a Shikai is the first release of a Zanpakuto. But there's a little more that goes into gaining a Shikai. So after you have learned the name, you must also subjugate your Zanpakuto spirit in the inner world. And what this means is, through combat, you have to go into the inner world and beat your Zanpakuto into submission. And once these two steps have been completed, you will fully realize your Shikai, and it will basically change the outer appearance of your Zanpakuto into a more individual, personalized style, as well as you'll gain abilities that are related to your Zanpakuto. And now, I said there were two forms to a Zanpakuto, and the second form is Bunkai. And unlike Shikai, Bunkai is especially hard to gain because of the requirements that are related to it, as well as you have to have a certain level of strength in order to obtain it. But Bunkai is said to be the most powerful thing that any Shinigami could have, and is a requirement for any Shinigami to become a captain of any of the 13 squads, with the exception of Kenpachi, who is just a monster. But how does one go about getting or obtaining their individual Bunkai? So the most tried and true method of obtaining a Bunkai is through gaining battle experience and conversing with your Zanpakuto spirit. And then once you have created a dialogue and have a good understanding, you will then need to be able to manifest your Zanpakuto spirit into the physical world. So unlike with unlocking the Shikai going into the inner world, you must bring your Zanpakuto spirit into the physical world and subjugate them again through battle. So upon subjugating your Zanpakuto spirit for the purposes of gaining a Bunkai, you will then learn the full name of your Zanpakuto, which will be the release command you will use when wanting to activate a Bunkai. And after completing this, you will then be able to unleash your Shikai without the release command, although in the show we see that a lot of people still use it, but it is actually not necessary. But even after obtaining your Bunkai, that is not the end of it, because you will still need to train with it to gain mastery over it, master the techniques and new abilities that you may have gained when you obtain your Bunkai. Bunkai is the final step to obtaining a larger power, but it is by no means the end all be all of a fight. And because each individual's bunkai is vastly different from the next, there's no true way to train a bunkai. You must basically train yourself and be your own master. And while this is where most people would end, I want to go a little bit further and talk about the evolution past bunkai. And what I mean by this is within the story of Bleach, we find out that there may be more to a Zanpakuto's evolution past bunkai, and we see it with Aizen and Ichigo during the Battle of Fate Karakura. And what I'm alluding to is that Zanpakuto originate from the Shinigami. And within the battle between Aizen and Ichigo at the end of the Fate Karakura town, we see that their Zanpakuto have begun to fuse with their bodies, which kind of makes sense in the long run if you really think about it, because a Zanpakuto is essentially a piece of the soul that resides in a separate body. And in order to truly become one with your Zanpakuto, having it merge back within yourself is basically the ultimate step to realizing your true potential. Because if your Zanpakuto has become part of you, then there is nothing to release. There is no name you need to call out. You are just calling upon your own individual power, which is essentially what you're doing when you're using a Zanpakuto. The power isn't something separate from you. The power that a Zanpakuto has is your power. But outside of Aizen and Ichigo, we don't see this within the Gotei 13, and I think that's largely because of how they view Zanpakuto as just tools of war to fight, when in actuality, Zanpakuto are those individual people. They are part of them. They are them. And until there's a shift within the Gotei 13 and how they view Zanpakuto, I don't think that they'll ever reach that true final evolution of what a Zanpakuto is supposed to be, and that is a part of themselves. And the main way we see this is how they go about obtaining more power from their Zanpakuto. Instead of accepting their Zanpakuto and becoming one with it, they view it as an outside force that needs to be subjugated through battle and forced into submission. But towards the end of this series, we see that there is going to be a paradigm shift in how the Shinigami operate, and hopefully they will eventually come to view Zanpakuto as more than tools of war and as pieces of themselves that make them stronger. And if this happens, should Kubo decide to continue the story in any way, maybe even in the Hell arc, we could see a new era of the Gotei 13 that has an unimaginable amount of power.